The frozen market, the orbital station, Velis Prime, hung like a metal chrysalis against the void, its outer rings rotating slowly to generate artificial gravity. Inside the commercial sector, the market district sprawled across 3 levels of interconnected platforms. Neon advertisements flickered in dozens of languages, casting colored shadows across the crowds that shuffled between stalls. The air recyclers hummed constantly, mixing the scents of alien spices, synthetic fabrics, and the sharp tang of ozone from passing cargo drones. Thera pressed herself against the wall of a thermal goods vendor. Her daughter Nyx tucked close against her side. The child's lips had taken on a faint blue tinge, her small body trembling, despite being wrapped in the thin emergency blanket they'd received at the refugee processing center 3 days ago. That blanket had been meant for short-term use only, just enough to get them to proper housing. But housing required credits, and credits required work authorization, and work authorization required an address. The cycle was impossible. The vendor, a stocky Corellian with 4 arms and tired eyes, shook his head for the 3rd time. No credit authorization, no sale. Station regulations. Thera's voice cracked as she tried again. Please, just 1 thermal unit. I'll work for you. I'll clean your stall. Anything. Can't do it. System won't release inventory without payment confirmation. The vendor wasn't cruel, just bound by the same automated systems that governed every transaction on Velis Prime. He returned to organizing his display. Uncomfortable with her desperation, Nyx tugged at her mother's sleeve, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mama, my fingers hurt from the cold." The words broke something inside Thera. She looked around the market, seeing the indifferent crowds, the security cameras mounted at every intersection, the gleaming storefronts that might as well have been on another world. Her people had once been farmers on Thesser Minor, living under open skies. Now they were refugees, scattered across the galaxy after the colony's atmospheric processors failed. Most of her family had died in the evacuation. She and Nyx had survived, but survival felt like a slow death. Desperation made her reckless. Thera raised her voice loud enough to carry across the immediate area. "I'll trade myself for 1 night. 1 blanket for 1 night with me." The market didn't fall silent like in the stories. It did something worse. It paused. Conversations stuttered. Heads turned. Some people looked away quickly, embarrassed. Others stared, their expressions ranging from pity to disgust to something darker. A few raised their wrist devices, got recording lights blinking to life. Nyx pressed her face against her mother's hip, sensing the shift in the air, even if she didn't understand the words. Thera felt shame burn through her body, hot and acidic, but she didn't take the words back. If this was what it took to keep her daughter warm, then she would carry the shame. The vendor stepped back from his stall, hands raised. "I didn't hear that. You need to move along." Before Thera could respond, a figure moved through the gathering crowd. He was human, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing the gray utility uniform of station logistics personnel. His hair was cut military short, and he moved with the kind of purposeful efficiency that came from years of training. He didn't push people aside. He simply walked, and people moved. Commander Jonas Reed had been on Velis Prime for 6 months, overseeing supply chain operations for the human diplomatic mission. He'd spent 15 years in the colonial marines before transitioning to civilian service, and he'd seen enough desperate situations to recognize one instantly. He'd been buying replacement seals for his quarters environmental system. When he heard the woman's offer, Jonas didn't hesitate. He stepped up to the vendor's counter, placed his palm on the payment scanner, and said quietly, 1 thermal unit. Full spectrum, child-sized. The vendor looked between Jonas and Thera, uncertain. Jonas's eyes never left the display. "Now please," the system beeped. Credits transferred. The vendor reached behind his counter and pulled out a compact thermal unit, surface already beginning to glow with stored heat. Jonas took it, knelt beside Nyx, and wrapped it around the child's shoulders. He secured the clasps with practiced efficiency, adjusting the fit so it covered her from neck to knees. Nyx's eyes went wide. "It's warm," she breathed, wonder in her voice. Jonas stood, removed his own jacket. went and draped it across Thera's shoulders before she could protest. The jacket was heavy, lined with thermal fibers, still carrying the warmth of his body. Thera clutched at it instinctively, her mouth opening to speak. But no sound emerged. That was when Jonas noticed the crowd. Several people still had their recording devices active, capturing the scene for whatever social feed or news aggregate they preferred. In the corner of his vision, he spotted 2 station security officers making their way through the market. Drawn by the disturbance, Jonas turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying the command authority he'd learned as a young officer. "Recording ends now. All of you." One by one, the lights blinked off. People found reasons to look elsewhere, to move along, to remember they had somewhere else to be. Jonas had that effect. It wasn't intimidation exactly. It was the calm certainty of someone who knew what needed to happen and expected others to cooperate. The security officers arrived, their expressions professionally neutral. The younger one, a Terran woman with lieutenant's bars, addressed Thera directly. "Ma'am, public solicitation violates station code 374. I need your identification for citation processing." Thera's heart dropped. A citation meant a mark on her refugee status. It could delay her work authorization by months. It could flag Nix for child services review. She pulled her daughter closer, panic rising. Jonas moved to stand between Thera and the officers. His posture relaxed, but his positioning deliberate. "No solicitation occurred, Lieutenant." She requested credit assistance. "I provided it." Transaction complete. The lieutenant's partner, an older Corellian officer, studied Jonas with knowing eyes. "She made an explicit offer, Commander." "We have witness reports." "Which you have," Jonas said calmly. "It's a mother trying to keep her child from freezing while station welfare systems processed her applications." "I addressed the immediate need. Unless you're suggesting I violated regulations by purchasing goods from a licensed vendor." The lieutenant exchanged glances with her partner. They both recognized Jonas's uniform designation. Logistics commanders had authority over resource allocation, which technically included humanitarian discretion and supply distribution. It was a stretch, but not an unreasonable one. More importantly, citing a refugee for desperation while a human officer was actively providing aid would generate the kind of negative attention that station administration preferred to avoid. Corellian officer tapped his slate. "Verbal warning logged. No citation." He looked at Thera, his expression softening slightly. "Ma'am, there are proper channels for emergency assistance. Use them." After the officers moved on, Thera finally found her voice. It came out as a whisper. "Why did you do that?" Jonas looked down at Nix, who had stopped shivering for the first time in days. "Because she needed help. You don't know us. Don't need to." Jonas gestured toward the market's exit. "There's a service corridor 3 sections over. Warmer. Less traffic. You should rest there while you figure out your next steps." Thera studied his face, searching for deception or hidden motive. She found only tired honesty. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing." Jonas started walking, assuming they would follow. After a moment's hesitation, they did. The service corridor was exactly as described. Warmer and quieter, with maintenance lighting casting a softer glow than the harsh commercial sector. Jonas led them to a small alcove near an environmental control junction, where heated air vented from the station's circulation systems. "This spot isn't monitored," Jonas said. "You can stay here tonight without trouble. Tomorrow, go to the Humanitarian Services Office in Section 12. Tell them Commander Reed sent you for expedited processing. Use my name." Thera clutched his jacket tighter around her shoulders. "They'll ask questions. Let them." Jonas pulled a data chip from his pocket and pressed it into her hand. "My contact information. If anyone gives you problems, call me." Before Thera could respond, Jonas turned to leave. He made it 5 steps before Nix's voice stopped him. "Will you come back?" Jonas looked back at the small alien child wrapped in the thermal unit he'd bought, her eyes huge and hopeful. Something in his chest tightened. He'd spent years training soldiers, years managing logistics, years learning to make calculated decisions based on optimal outcomes. Nothing in that experience prepared him for the simple hope in a child's question. Yes, he heard himself say. I'll come back. As Jonas walked away, Thera sank down against the warm wall, Nyx curled in her lap. She buried her face in his jacket, breathing in the scent of human fabric, soap, and something else, something like safety. She didn't understand why this stranger had helped them. She didn't trust it yet. But for the first time since leaving this or minor, she felt the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they might survive this, in the shadows of the service corridor. Wrapped in unexpected kindness, Thera allowed herself to hope. The quiet shelter Jonas returned the next morning carrying a thermal container of hot food and a bag of basic supplies. He found them in the same alcove where he'd left them. Nyx still wrapped in the thermal unit, Thera sitting with her back against the wall, his jacket spread across both of them like a blanket. They hadn't moved much during the night. Thera's eyes tracked him with wary alertness as he approached, her body positioning itself between him and her daughter, even as exhaustion made her movements slow. He set the container down within their reach, but not too close, respecting the distance Thera needed. Grain porridge with protein supplement. Station cafeteria food. Nothing fancy, but it's warm. Thera didn't move immediately. Why are you back? Said I would be. Jonas gestured to the container. You should eat. You need strength for the Humanitarian Services Office. I went yesterday, Thera said quietly. After you left, they said processing takes minimum 7 days. Maybe longer. They gave me a number to check status. Jonas frowned. 7 days is standard queue time. Did you mention I sent you? I tried. The intake clerk said Commander referrals don't change processing timelines. Thera's voice carried the flatness of someone who'd stopped expecting help. They gave us 2 more emergency blankets and directed us to the temporary shelter in Sector 9. And you didn't go. Sector 9 shelter requires biometric registration. If they scan me, they'll flag the incident from yesterday. Even without official citation, it goes in the system. That affects Nyx's placement eligibility. Thera pulled her daughter closer. I won't risk them separating us. Jonas was quiet for a moment, processing. She wasn't wrong. Station bureaucracy was designed to protect vulnerable populations. But it often treated refugees like problems to be managed rather than people to be helped. A mother flagged for inappropriate public behavior, even without formal charges, could easily have her parental fitness questioned. All right, Jonas said finally. Different plan. He pulled out his personal slate and began entering information. Thera watched him cautiously, unable to see his screen but noting the speed and certainty of his inputs. After several minutes, Jonas held the device out to her. Authorization code for my quarters. Sector 4, residential level. I'm keying it to recognize your biometrics and Nyx's. You can stay there while we sort out your permanent situation. Thera stared at the slate, like it might bite her. That's not necessary. Maybe not. But it's warmer than this corridor. There's a proper bed, and the environmental controls actually work. Jonas kept his voice level, factual. I'm authorized to occupants under dependent housing allocation. You'd be documented guests, nothing illegal or unofficial. No flags, no questions. You're a stranger. I'm someone with a spare bed and functioning heat. Jonas set the slate down beside the food container. Not asking you to trust me. Just asking you to let your daughter sleep somewhere comfortable. Nyx stirred, her small voice muffled by the thermal unit. Mom, I'm hungry. The simple statement made Thera's decision. She reached for the food container, opened it, and helped Nyx eat first. The child consumed the porridge quickly, her body desperate for calories. Thera ate more slowly, watching Jonas the entire time. He didn't hover or pressure. He simply waited, standing at ease with the patience of someone who'd spent years learning stillness. When they finished, Thera picked up the slate. If I accept this, what do you expect? Expect you to keep Nyx warm and fed. Expect you to rest. Expect you to let me help navigate station bureaucracy, because I know how it works and you don't. Jonas met her eyes directly. I don't expect anything else. The emphasis on the last sentence was subtle but clear. Thera felt heat rise in her face, shame mixing with something closer to relief. And if someone asks why you're housing refugees, I'll tell them the truth, that I saw someone who needed help and had the means to provide it. Jonas picked up the empty food container. Station regs allow emergency humanitarian housing for up to 30 days under officer discretion. We're well within legal parameters. Thera stood slowly, helping Nix to her feet. The child swayed slightly, dizzy from malnutrition and poor sleep. Jonas instinctively moved to steady her, then caught himself and stepped back, letting Thera provide support. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. "Show us the way," Thera said quietly. Jonas's quarters occupied a small unit in the mid-level residential sector, designed for single-station personnel. The space was austere but functional, a main room with compact kitchen facilities, a sleeping area separated by a privacy screen, and a small bathroom with sonic shower. Everything was precisely organized. Clothes folded with military corners, kitchen supplies arranged by size, personal items limited to a few framed photographs, and an old paper book on the desk. Nix's eyes went wide as she stepped inside. "It's so warm." "Environmental controls maintain constant temperature," Jonas explained, adjusting the settings slightly higher. "Bathrooms there, kitchen's automated, but I prefer cooking manually. Bed's behind the screen, you can both use it. I'll take the couch." Thera turned sharply. "You're staying?" "It's my quarters, but I work long shifts. You'll have privacy most of the time." Jonas moved to the kitchen area, busying himself with preparing another meal. "House rules are simple. Don't damage anything, don't let anyone in without checking with me first, and if Nix needs something, ask. No question is stupid if it keeps her safe." Over the next several hours, Thera began to understand the kind of person Jonas was. He wasn't particularly talkative, didn't try to make them comfortable with false cheerfulness or excessive reassurance. Instead, he simply went about his routine, including them in it naturally. He showed Nix how to operate the entertainment console, demonstrated the shower controls for Thera, explained the food synthesizer's basic functions. Each explanation was clear and practical, delivered without condescension. When evening came, Jonas prepared a proper meal. Vegetables and grain protein cooked with careful attention. They ate together at the small table, Nix chattering excitedly about the shows she'd discovered on the console, Thera mostly quiet but observant. After dinner, Jonas helped Nix arrange blankets on the bed, creating a nest that made the child giggle. "You're good with children," Thera observed. "Watching from the doorway? Trained young recruits for years." Similar principles apply. Be clear, be consistent, be present. Jonas finished tucking the blankets. Though they complained less about bedtime, Nix yawned, already half asleep. "Will you be here tomorrow? I have a morning shift, but I'll be back for evening meal." Jonas moved toward the door, giving them space. "Sleep well." After Nix drifted off, Thera found Jonas on the couch, reading his paper book by the dim light of a desk lamp. She approached slowly, still wearing his jacket over her thin clothes. "I need you to understand something," she said quietly. "I'm grateful for this. For all of it. But I won't become dependent. I won't become a kept woman trading different currency than credits." Jonas looked up from his book, his expression serious. "I'm not keeping you. I'm helping you get stable enough. Stand on your own. There's a difference, is there?" Thera's voice carried years of learned skepticism. "Men don't usually help without expecting something eventually. Some men are different." Jonas closed his book, marking the page carefully. "I lost people during the war. Civilians caught in crossfire, refugees we couldn't evacuate in time. I made decisions that prioritized mission success over individual lives, because that's what command required." He paused. "I can't change those decisions. But I can make different choices now, when someone needs help and I have the means to provide it." The honesty in his voice was almost harder to bear than manipulation would have been. Thera wrapped the jacket tighter around herself. "What if I can't repay this? It's not debt. It's just decency." Jonas reopened his book, a signal that the conversation could end if she wanted. "Get some sleep, Thera. Tomorrow, I'll take you to someone who can actually expedite your work authorization." friend of mine owes me a favor. Thera stood there a moment longer, studying this strange human who gave without asking, who spoke plainly without games, whose small quarters somehow felt safer than anywhere she'd been since leaving her home world. Finally, she nodded and retreated behind the privacy screen, where Nick slept peacefully in a real bed for the first time in months, as Thera lay down beside her daughter, listening to the quiet hum of environmental systems and Jonas turning pages in the other room. She allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, some men really were different. The morning after, Thera awoke to the smell of cooking and a moment of disoriented panic before remembering where she was. Gray light filtered through the privacy screen. The chronometer on the wall read 0600 hours. She could hear movement in the kitchen area, the quiet sounds of someone trying not to wake others. She slipped out of bed carefully, not disturbing Nyx, and emerged from behind the screen. Jonas stood at the small stove, cooking what looked like protein cakes in a pan. He'd already dressed for work, his uniform crisp and neat. He glanced up as she approached, but didn't stop his cooking. "Morning. I'm making extra. You should eat before I leave." Thera realized she was still wearing his jacket. She started to remove it, but he shook his head. "Keep it until you have something warmer. Station residential sectors are temperature controlled, but corridors can be cold." She sat at the table, watching him work. His movements were economical and practiced, the efficiency of someone who'd cooked for himself for years. "You wake this early every day?" "Military habit. Never managed to break it." Jonas plated the protein cakes, added synthesized fruit paste, and set one plate in front of her. "I have shift briefing at 0700. I should be back around 1800 hours. There's food and storage, entertainment console access, and emergency contact protocols on the slate I gave you. If anything happens, use them." "What counts as emergency?" "Anything that makes you uncomfortable or puts Nyx at risk. Security issues, medical concerns, someone asking questions about your presence here. Don't try to handle problems alone." Jonas poured water into 2 cups. "I also loaded station maps on the slate. You're authorized to access common areas and public facilities. Just avoid the administrative sectors until we sort your status." Thera ate slowly, the food sitting heavy in her nervous stomach. "What happens when your 30 days of humanitarian housing expires?" "We'll have your permanent situation sorted before then." Jonas finished his own breakfast quickly. "This afternoon I'm meeting with Administrator Chen, Human Liaison Office. She handles refugee integration programs. I'm going to request she'll prioritize your case." "Why would she do that?" "Because I'll remind her that efficient refugee processing reduces strain on emergency services and reflects well on human diplomatic presence." Jonas rinsed his plate in the sonic cleaner. "Also, she served under my command during the war. She owes me several favors." The casual mention of past military service reminded Thera how little she actually knew about this man. "What did you do in the war?" Jonas paused, his back to her. "Reconnaissance and strategic insertion. We went places where regular forces couldn't operate, gathered intelligence, extracted personnel when situations went critical. I commanded a team of 12. 7 survived." The flatness in his voice told Thera everything about how he felt about those numbers. She wanted to say something comforting but couldn't find words that didn't sound hollow. Instead, she asked, "Is that why you help people now?" "Guilt? Maybe partially." Jonas turned to face her. "But also because I can. I have resources, authority, and knowledge of how systems work. Using those things to help someone doesn't require complicated motivation." A small sound from behind the privacy screen signaled Nyx waking. Jonas collected his work bag, heading for the door. "There's a children's education program in Sector 6. Free access for station residents. If you want, I can get Nyx enrolled. Give her something to do during the day. Social interaction with other children." Thera felt her throat tighten. "You've thought about this? About more than just a few days?" "I think about contingencies. It's my training." Jonas opened the door. "But yes, if you're staying until your situation stabilizes, Nyx should have normalcy. Children need routine." After he left, Thera sat at the table for a long time, processing the conversation. Behind her, Nix emerged from the sleeping area, rubbing her eyes. Where did the nice man go? To work. Thera pulled her daughter onto her lap. We're staying here for a while, really. Nix's eyes lit up. In the warm place? With the soft bed? Yes, little one. In the warm place. Later that morning, Thera used the shower properly for the first time. The sonic cleanser removed layers of grime and stress. And afterward, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror studying her reflection. Her green skin looked healthier already, her white hair beginning to regain its natural luster. She borrowed one of Jonas's shirts, the fabric hanging loose on her smaller frame, but clean and soft. When she emerged, Nix looked up from the entertainment console and smiled. Mama, you look pretty. The simple observation shouldn't have mattered, but it did. Thera realized she'd stopped thinking of herself as anything other than a desperate refugee. Someone to be processed and managed and moved along. Standing in this quiet quarters wearing borrowed clothes, she remembered she was a person. Jonas returned that evening carrying packages. He set them on the counter without ceremony. Clothing vouchers from humanitarian services. Chen fast-tracked your intake paperwork. You have work authorization pending, should be finalized within 72 hours. Also got Nix enrolled in the education program. Starts tomorrow if you're comfortable with that. Thera stared at the packages. How did you manage all that in one day? Made it priority. Called in those favors? Jonas began unpacking supplies he'd brought, basic toiletries and food supplements. Chen says there are 3 positions available that match your background qualifications. Environmental systems, maintenance, agricultural section support, or educational assistance. You can review details tonight and choose tomorrow. You're doing too much. Thera's voice came out sharper than intended. Why are you doing this? Jonas stopped unpacking and looked at her directly. Because yesterday you were sleeping in a corridor. Today you have options. That's what help looks like. It doesn't have to be complicated. Nix had been listening quietly from the couch. She got up and walked over to Jonas, looking up at him with serious eyes. Are you our family now? The question hung in the air. Jonas knelt down to her level. I'm your friend. Friends help each other, but you live with us. For now, until your mother gets settled. Nix considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, but I think you're nice. Nicer than the people at the shelters? After Nix went to bed, Thera and Jonas sat at the table reviewing the employment options on his slate. They sat closer than necessary, shoulders nearly touching. Thera found herself acutely aware of his presence, the quiet steadiness that radiated from him. The agricultural position pays best, she said, trying to focus on the screen. But environmental systems maintenance would teach me skills that transfer better. Choose what interests you, not just what pays. You'll be better at work you care about. Jonas pointed to details in the job descriptions. Environmental systems has better advancement opportunities. Training programs, certification paths. Thera turned her head to respond and realized how close their faces were. Jonas noticed the same moment she did. For several heartbeats, neither moved. Then Jonas cleared his throat and leaned back slightly, giving her space. Sorry, didn't mean to crowd you. You didn't. Thera's voice came out softer than intended. I just realized I feel safe here. With you. That's unusual for me. Jonas met her eyes. You should feel safe. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm starting to believe that. Thera looked down at her hands. Which is dangerous in its own way. Why dangerous? Because in 30 days I'll have to leave. Because I can't let myself depend on temporary kindness. Because she trailed off. Not wanting to voice the other reason, the growing awareness that she found him attractive, that his quiet strength drew her in ways that terrified her. Jonas was silent for a moment. 30 days is minimum humanitarian housing. There's no maximum if circumstances require extended support. And when you do leave, it'll be because you're ready and stable, not because a timer expired. What if I'm never ready? Then we'll figure that out when it happens. Jonas stood, collecting the dishes from their meal. For now, choose a job. Let Nick start school. Take things one day at a time. That night, lying in bed with Nix sleeping peacefully beside her, Thera stared at the ceiling and thought about the human in the other room. She thought about his careful kindness, his matter-of-fact competence, the way he treated her daughter with genuine care. She thought about how his presence made her feel protected rather than owned, supported rather than indebted. And she thought about how much harder it would be to leave when the time came, because somewhere in the past 48 hours, Jonas's quarters had started feeling like home. Building trust 3 weeks passed with surprising ease. Thera started work in the Environmental Systems Division, learning station maintenance protocols and mechanical repair procedures. The work was physical, but satisfying, and her supervisors praised her quick learning. Nix thrived in the education program, making friends with other children and coming home each day bursting with stories about lessons and games. Jonas maintained his steady routine, working his logistics shifts and returning each evening to share meals and quiet conversation. The three of them developed rhythms that felt domestic, natural. Jonas taught Nix basic station navigation, walking her to school the first few days until she knew the route by heart. Thera took over most of the cooking, finding pleasure in preparing meals for more than just survival. Evenings became predictable in the best way, with Nix doing homework at the table while Thera and Jonas discussed their days, sharing the small details that accumulated into intimacy. But the bureaucratic machinery of station administration continued grinding. And one morning Jonas was summoned to Administrator Chen's office for a formal review of his housing arrangements. He left for work with tension in his shoulders that Thera had learned to recognize as concern. Jonas stood in Administrator Chen's office, hands clasped behind his back in automatic military posture. Chen sat behind her desk, reviewing data on multiple screens. She was a compact woman in her mid-40s, her dark hair pulled back severely, her expression professionally neutral. They had served together during the Battle of Kepler Station, and she had been one of his best tactical analysts. That shared history bought him consideration but not special treatment. Commander Reed, I have reviewed your humanitarian housing authorization. The refugees you have been supporting, Thera and Nix of the Sur Minor, their 30-day window expires in 9 days. Chen looked up from her screens. Do you plan to extend? Yes, Administrator. Their situation has not stabilized sufficiently for independent housing. According to reports, Thera has secured employment and Nix is enrolled in education programs. That sounds reasonably stable? Chen leaned back in her chair. I am not criticizing your compassion, Jonas. I am asking about your long-term plan. Humanitarian housing is meant to be temporary bridge assistance. Jonas chose his words carefully. Thera's employment is probationary. She has not accrued sufficient credits for security deposits on independent housing. Refugee family placement has a 6-month waiting list. Returning them to temporary shelter would undo the stability they have achieved. So you are proposing to house them indefinitely. I am proposing to continue. Support until they can reasonably achieve independence. That might be 6 months, might be longer. Chen studied him with the analytical gaze he remembered from tactical briefings. This is not entirely about bureaucratic efficiency, is it? You have become attached. Jonas did not deny it. They needed help. I provided it. The situation has worked well for everyone involved. Worked well. Chen repeated the phrase thoughtfully. Jonas, I approved your initial humanitarian authorization because it was appropriate and legal. But extended housing changes the dynamic. Station Council will want to know why a single officer is effectively adopting a refugee family without formal proceedings. I am not adopting them. I am housing them. The distinction may matter less than you think. Chen pulled up new data on her screens. However, I have reviewed their case thoroughly. Thera's work performance is excellent. Nix's education assessments show significant progress. Your housing arrangement appears beneficial for all parties. As she paused, I can authorize extended humanitarian housing for an additional 6 months. But Jonas, you need to consider what happens after that. Eventually this becomes permanent, or it ends. Half measures create problems. Jonas absorbed the implications. Are you suggesting formal adoption proceedings? I am suggesting you think about what you actually want here. Because from my analysis, you have already integrated them into your life. Making it official would simply align paperwork with reality. Chen's expression softened slightly. You are a good man trying to do right by people who need help. I respect that. But you also need to protect yourself legally and emotionally. Decide what this relationship is, then make it formal.
Ow.
Jonas left the meeting with Chen's words circling his thoughts. He had been so focused on immediate needs and day-to-day stability that he had not let himself consider the longer trajectory. Did he want Thera and Nyx permanently? The question felt both obvious and terrifying. He returned to his quarters that evening to find Thera preparing dinner while Nyx worked on homework. The scene was utterly ordinary and completely precious. Thera looked up when he entered, her expression immediately concerned. How was your meeting? Chen authorized extension of housing. 6 more months, potentially longer. Jonas set down his bag, watching relief flood Thera's face. But she raised questions about long-term arrangements. What happens when temporary becomes permanent? Thera stopped stirring the pot on the stove. What did you tell her? That I had not thought that far ahead. Jonas moved closer, lowering his voice so Nyx would not overhear. But maybe I should have. The air between them shifted, becoming charged with unspoken possibilities. Thera set down her spoon, turning to face him fully. Jonas, I cannot ask you to make us your responsibility forever. You have already done more than anyone could expect. I know you are not asking. I am offering. Jonas struggled to find words for feelings he barely understood himself. These past 3 weeks, coming home has meant something different. Not just a place to sleep, but people to come home to. I have not had that since before the war. Thera's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the counter edge. I feel the same way. But I am afraid to trust it. Afraid of depending on something that might disappear? What if it does not have to disappear? Jonas took a step closer. Chen mentioned formal adoption proceedings. Legal permanent arrangements. Adoption. Thera's voice came out barely above a whisper. You would adopt Nyx and provide legal status for you as family unit guardian. It would give you both permanent residency, full station citizenship rights, access to resources without refugee restrictions. Jonas watched her carefully. But more than that, it would make official what already feels real, that you belong here. Tears gathered in Thera's eyes. Why would you do that? Bind yourself legally to strangers? You are not strangers anymore. Jonas reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. You are people I care about. People I want in my life. If that makes me foolish, then I am foolish. Thera looked down at their joined hands, his larger and rougher, hers smaller and marked by recent manual labor. The physical connection sent warmth spreading through her chest. I have not let myself imagine a future beyond survival. But with you, I am starting to believe in more. Believe in it. Jonas squeezed her hand gently. I am not going anywhere. Nyx's voice interrupted from the table. Are you two holding hands? They both turned to find the child watching them with interest. Thera flushed, but did not pull away. Yes, little one. Does that mean Jonas is staying forever? Jonas knelt down to Nyx's level, still holding Thera's hand. Would you like that? If I stayed, and you stayed, and we were a family? Nyx considered this with the seriousness children bring to important questions. Would you be my papa? The word hit Jonas with unexpected force. He had never imagined himself as a father, had thought his life too shaped by military service for that kind of connection. But looking at this small alien child who had trusted him from the beginning, he found the idea did not frighten him. If you want me to be. If your mama agrees, Nyx looked up at Thera. Mama, can he be my papa? Thera's tears spilled over. She knelt beside Jonas, pulling Nyx into an embrace that included all 3 of them. Yes, little one. If that is what we all want, I want it, Nyx said firmly. Jonas makes good food, and he knows where everything is, and he does not yell, and he makes you smile, Mama. Thera laughed through her tears, meeting Jonas's eyes over Nyx's head. He does make me smile. Then it is decided, Nix announced with childlike certainty. We are a family now. Later that night, after Nix had gone to bed, Thera and Jonas sat together on the couch, closer than they had allowed themselves before. The weight of the evening's conversation hung between them, heavy with possibility. Are you sure about this? Thera asked quietly. Adoption proceedings are permanent. You cannot change your mind in 6 months if it becomes difficult. I do not want to change my mind. Jonas turned to face her. Thera, I spent years in situations where I could not save everyone, where I had to make calculations about acceptable losses. This is the opposite of that. This is choosing to save everyone I can, starting with the 2 people in this room who matter most to me. Thera reached up, touching his face gently. You matter to me too. More than I expected. More than I know how to handle. Jonas covered her hand with his own. We will figure it out together. The kiss happened naturally, without planning or hesitation. Thera leaned in. Jonas met her halfway, and their lips touched with gentle certainty. It was not passionate or desperate, but rather a promise, a claiming, a mutual acknowledgement of what they were building together. The new beginning 6 weeks after that conversation, Jonas stood in Administrator Chen's office again, but this time, Thera stood beside him. They each held data pads containing formal adoption documentation, citizenship transfer papers, and family unit registration forms. Nix waited in the outer office with Chen's assistant, drawing pictures with styluses on a spare tablet. Chen reviewed their submitted paperwork with methodical attention. Commander Reed, Citizen Thera, I have completed assessment of your adoption petition and family unit application. All documentation is in order. Medical evaluations, psychological assessments, home environment reviews, everything meets station requirements. She looked up at them. I am prepared to approve this request, but I want to ensure you both understand the implications. We understand, Administrator, Jonas said formally. Do you? Chen fixed Thera with a direct gaze. Citizen Thera, this adoption grants you legal status as family guardian, essentially making you Jonas's spouse in station legal framework. You will share resources, legal responsibilities, and parental authority. If the relationship deteriorates, separation involves formal proceedings. This is not temporary housing you can simply walk away from. Thera met Chen's gaze steadily. I understand. I am choosing this freely, with full knowledge of what it means. Chen turned to Jonas. And you, Commander. You are accepting legal responsibility for a child not biologically related to you. It's from a species not your own, with all the cultural and logistical complications that entails. Nix will carry your family name. Your service record will reflect dependence. Your career mobility will be affected. You are certain? Absolutely certain, Jonas replied without hesitation. Chen studied them both for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. I am approving your petition. She pressed her thumb to the authorization pad, and the documents lit up with official validation codes. Congratulations. You are now legally recognized as a family unit. Nix is officially your daughter. Thera is officially your spouse equivalent. Welcome to the Permanent Resident Registry of Velis Prime Station. The formal language could not quite capture the enormity of what had just happened. Thera felt tears gathering again, the same tears that seemed to come so easily these days. Tears of relief and joy and disbelief that this was real. Jonas took her hand, squeezing gently. Thank you, Administrator. Thank me by being happy, Chen said, her professional demeanor softening slightly. I have known you a long time, Jonas. I have never seen you as settled as you have been these past months. Whatever you have found with them, hold on to it. They collected Nix from the outer office. The child looked up hopefully. Are we done with the boring parts? We are done, Jonas confirmed. You are officially my daughter now. Your full name is Nix Reed. Nix tested the name silently, her lips moving. Then she grinned. I like it. It sounds strong. You're strong, Thera said, hugging her daughter close. We all are. The next step was practical but significant. Their temporary quarters were too small for 3 people long-term. So Jonas had applied for family housing in the residential sector. The new space was larger, with 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and a living area with actual furniture. It was not luxurious, but it was theirs. Moving day was chaotic in the best way. Nix ran between rooms, claiming the smaller bedroom with enthusiasm, declaring where her bed should go and which wall should hold her artwork. Thera organized the kitchen with careful attention, arranging supplies and equipment with the pleasure of someone creating a real home. Jonas handled the logistics, coordinating furniture delivery and updating their residential registration. That first night in the new quarters, they ate dinner together at a real dining table. Nix chattered about her day at school, about her friends and her teachers and the game they had played during recreation time. Thera listened with that particular attention mothers give their children, asking questions and laughing at the funny parts. Jonas watched them both, still adjusting to the reality that this was his life now, that he got to come home to this every day after Nix went to bed in her new room. Thera and Jonas stood together in the living area, looking out the large window at the station's interior lights stretching into the distance. "It feels real now," Thera said quietly. "Like we actually made it. We did make it." Jonas wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against his chest. "From that night in the market to here, that is real." Thera turned in his embrace, looking up at him. "I need to tell you something. I have been afraid to say it because it makes me feel vulnerable, but you deserve to hear it. Tell me, I love you." The words came out steady. "Sure. Not because you saved us, not because you gave us security. I love you because of who you are, because you are kind and steady, and you make me feel safe in ways I did not know I needed. Because you are a good father to Nix and a good partner to me. Because when I imagine my future, I cannot imagine it without you." Jonas felt something tight in his chest release. "I love you too. I think I started loving you that first night, watching you fight so hard to protect your daughter, and it has only grown since then. Every morning, every meal, every quiet evening. You have given me a reason to be more than just a logistics officer, filling time between missions." The kiss was deeper this time, full of promise and heat and the knowledge that they had time now, that this was not temporary. When they pulled apart, both breathing harder, Thera smiled. "We should probably slow down." Nix might wake up, probably Jonas agreed, but he did not let go of her. "Thera, I want to marry you. Properly, not just legal paperwork. I want ceremony and vows and the commitment that comes with choosing each other in front of witnesses." Thera's eyes widened. "Are you proposing?" "Yes." Jonas took both her hands. "I know we did this backwards, building a family before formalizing the relationship. But I want to do this right. Will you marry me?" "Yes." Thera laughed, the sound bright with joy. "Yes, I will marry you." They married 3 months later in a small ceremony attended by close friends and colleagues. Administrator Chen served as official witness. Nix was flower girl, taking her role with utmost seriousness. The ceremony blended human and the Sarian traditions, vows spoken in both languages, unity rituals from both cultures. When Jonas kissed his bride, Nix cheered loudly, making everyone laugh. The reception was simple, held in one of the station's common areas, with food and music and dancing. Jonas, who claimed he could not dance, held Thera close and moved with her anyway, their bodies finding rhythm together. Nix danced with everyone, her energy inexhaustible, her happiness infectious. Later that night, after Nix had fallen asleep exhausted in her room, Jonas and Thera lay together in their bed. The door closed for the first time, with the knowledge that this was truly their private space now. Their marriage making it official. "I never thought I would have this," Thera whispered in the darkness. "A home, a partner, safety for my daughter. That night in the market, I was so desperate, I did not believe we would survive the week." "You survived? You are strong." Jonas pulled her closer. "But you do not have to be strong alone anymore. Neither do you." Thera kissed him softly. "We are partners now, in everything." Their lovemaking was tender and exploratory, both of them learning each other with patience and care. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked quietly about their hopes for the future. Thera wanted to advance in her career, maybe eventually supervise her own maintenance team. Jonas talked about possibly transitioning to humanitarian coordination, using his experience to help other refugees navigate station systems. They both wanted to give Nyx the best education possible, to watch her grow and thrive. "Do you think we will have more children?" Thera asked suddenly. Jonas considered. "Would you want that?" "Maybe someday, when we are more settled." Thera traced patterns on his chest. "I like the idea of Nyx having siblings, of growing our family. Then we will think about it. When the time is right." Jonas kissed her forehead. "We have time now. That is the miracle of this. We have time." Months passed into a year, then 2. The family grew into their life together with steady contentment. Nyx excelled in school, making friends easily and showing particular talent for mathematics and spatial reasoning. Thera earned promotion to assistant supervisor in environmental systems, her skills recognized and valued. Jonas transitioned to refugee services coordination, finding purpose and helping others navigate the same systems he and Thera had mastered. They celebrated holidays and birthdays. They dealt with the normal challenges of family life, disagreements and stress, and the occasional bad day. But they faced everything together, communication and compromise making them stronger. On the 3rd anniversary of that night in the market, Jonas took his family to the exact spot where he had first seen Thera and Nyx. The vendor stall was still there, run by the same Corellian who had refused them service. The man did not recognize them at first, but when Jonas introduced his family, understanding dawned in his eyes. "I remember," the vendor said quietly, "the desperate woman and her child. You were the human who helped them." "I was." Jonas put his arm around Thera. "Now she is my wife, and this is our daughter."